Now let's go into a shocking story about how the media was literally being funded by the United States government. This is Elon going in with Doge and kind of cleaning house with USAID. It seemed like, from what I read, that they're just taking the department and moving it from its own separate entity and kind of incorporating it into the federal government umbrella just for efficiencies. And I'm like, I would much prefer the afuera approach, the Malay. Just get rid of it. Like, why is this entity of the federal government absorbing this US aid thing? Let's just get rid of it altogether. That's what I'd prefer to see. But it looks like they did an audit of where all these billions and billions and billions of dollars were going. And as you would imagine, it was a complete boondoggle. Complete boondoggle. And this is why whenever you hear the people in the mainstream media or in the government, the central planners and authoritarians, they always state the intention. Well, we can't get rid of USAID because then what are the starving Ethiopian kids going to do? Well, that's the intention. What was the actual result of USAID? Oh, it was just to go into the back pockets of all the global elite. Oh, it was just to fund all of these NGOs, which, by the way, would give political donations to all the central planners in Washington, D.C. So it's just a ruse. It's a ruse. It's a boondoggle. It's something that's set up to make the American people feel good while it's milking them for billions and billions of dollars, and almost $0 are going to the starving kid in Ethiopia. But if you even mention that we should audit it or maybe pull it back, then of course the lefties come out and accuse you of being insensitive or something like that, when really the only thing that you are being insensitive to is their pocketbook, the graft, the political pull. So let's go over to where we were, probably on Zero Hedge. Here we go. So this is just one of the discoveries made by, I believe it was Elon going in and then kind of, I don't know whether he opened up the kimono and then people took that, ran with it, starting to analyze it, or this is something that came out from Doge itself. But let's read the article. This is just one of the things that was shocking, but the rabbit hole goes really deep. That's the bottom line. So White House confirms Politico propped up by millions of dollars from the government. So what was happening, let me just read here. During Wednesday's White House presser, Caroline Leavitt confirmed Politico has been getting more than $8 million of taxpayer money. It's gone essentially subsidizing subscriptions. It was Politico that maneuvered to have Hunter laptop story banned. Shocker, right? I mean, we sit there when the mainstream media is so biased and we kind of scratch our heads and we're like, why is this? And you have all these theories like, well, maybe it's that the editors and the journalists, the reporters are all kind of lefty. They go to these Ivy League schools. So when they get out, they lean left and it's just their bias coming through, or the echo chamber, when in reality, most likely, it's the government just calling up and saying, hey, if you want to stay in business, that whole Hunter laptop story, yeah, that needs to go away ASAP. Or you need to spin this as though it's just a conspiracy theory or fake news or misinformation or disinformation. And then they say, yes, master, yes, master. And they go ahead and cut them a check so they don't go tits up. So what kind of drew the first red flag here is when they froze the US aid funding. Remember that was a week ago, a couple weeks ago? Just coincidentally, the staff at Politico did not get paid. So Politico, as soon as they stop the funding, Politico comes out to their employees and say, yeah, sorry, we can't make payroll. Wow. I mean, talk about living hand to mouth. I mean, they're literally running a business paycheck to paycheck, but their paycheck is coming from the Biden administration, or was, or their paycheck was coming from this boondoggle. Now it's so clear now as to why these things are so hard to get rid of, because everybody's on the dole. Everybody in DC is on the dole, and they're all milking the American taxpayer. It's not just the politicians, the mainstream media. They're all one and the same. They're all one group, and they all survive. They're all parasites that survive on the taxpayer. So you can't get rid of these boondoggle programs because then their jobs go away. Their livelihood goes away. The grift is gone. So, of course, you're going to have massive blowback. And of course, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to try to take Trump out. And we go back to those attempts. And now I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying that's what happened, but if that was the intention there, if that was what was happening behind the scenes, I mean, it makes sense when Trump is going to come in and completely disrupt everything. It's going to mean all of these politicians, all of these people in the mainstream media, all these people with a lot of power that have been manipulating the American public for decades. The gravy train is over for them. So of course, so why wouldn't they come up with some sort of conspiracy to take out this guy that's going to take away everything that not everything you've worked for, but it's going to take away the goose that laid the golden egg. I mean, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a little bit of Zoolander. Not the Zoolander 2, that wasn't very good, but the first Zoolander was just epic. And remember the first scene where these people are kind of, you can't really see them, but it looks like Karl Lagerfeld and some of these famous designers. And they're over there saying, oh, we got this big problem that the Malaysian prime minister is going to jack up wages and that's going to impact our livelihood. And we're all going to go bankrupt if we allow this Malaysian prime minister to take away the child labor laws or whatever it is, right? And they're sitting there talking to Will Ferrell's character, and they're like, you got to do something about it. You got to do something about it. You got to take out, the Malaysian prime minister, and you got to get some guy to kill him. And he's like, how am I going to find anyone that stupid? And then it cuts to Ben Stiller's character, the Zoolander character itself. But it's almost like you can see the exact same thing happening in real life where, you got all these people that are gathered around this table and they're like, look, it's just Trump was the Malaysian prime minister. That's the bottom line here. Maybe. So government contracts with news outlets are big business. While I don't discount that other shenanigans may be going on, just the subscription services netted to Politico's $27.5 million during the Biden years. Digital business is tough. It's nice to have a loyal customer. Yeah, so that's likely how they're funneling the money to them. It's like, well, we're not giving them money. No, we're just buying 100,000 monthly subscriptions from them. I mean, we need that, right? Wink, wink, wink. So Elon points out this is odd. The details on that are subscriptions to Politico for 37 users in FDA for $500,000 to Politico. For heaven's sakes, this isn't even like the New York Times or the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. Politico, of all places. Wow. I mean, this has got to be one of the biggest grifts of all time. Politico has a subscription called Politico Pro. What? Which costs $10,000 a year? Look, again, this is just speculation on my part, but my guess is Politico didn't have a $10,000 a year program. Nothing they could produce would be worth $10,000. That's like a subscription to a Bloomberg terminal, for heaven's sakes. Trust me, they're not delivering that much value, not even close. But probably what they did is they're like, wait, we need this government kickbacks here. We need the free money coming from the government. How are we going to do that with a $97, or not even that, with a $19.99 per month subscription? Well, we can't do that. So we've got to come up with this outrageous price point and somehow justify it with some bells and whistles. And therefore, when the government wants to give us money, hush hush money or whatever it is, then they can do so by just buying these $10,000 programs as opposed to the $19.99 a month. It's basically money laundering is what you're doing. Jeez. Zero Hedge says, so 90% of the subscribers, quote unquote, to the left-wing publications like Politico are fake. Yeah, doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, it really, everything that we have seen since 2020, if this is true, it all starts to make sense, doesn't it? I mean, it's like all the pieces of the puzzle are kind of falling into place. Of course, this is why the mainstream media was pushing anything the Biden administration would say, no matter how ludicrous, and this is why they would double, triple, and quadruple down. I remember before we had the Biden moment, and that's what I'm talking about there, is the first debate with Trump, where it was painfully obvious that his mental faculties had declined to a significant degree. And the whole time it was obvious that Biden was losing it. It was obvious to you. It was obvious to me. It was obvious to a third grader. And yet you'd sit there and scratch your head and say, why on earth is the mainstream media just doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on Biden being as sharp as a tack or being some sort of Rhodes Scholar? Well, now it all makes sense, doesn't it? And then they use fake subs to artificially. I mean, how is this legal? I don't know if Politico is publicly traded, but I mean, if they are, or if publicly traded media outlets were part of this grift, the SEC obviously has to get involved here, because what would happen, to Zero Hedge's point, is they are taking those effectively fake subscriptions, like they say, and then they're claiming that those are actual subscribers. And then that's going to impact their share price. And so they're literally lying to shareholders. This is, and again, I don't know if they're publicly traded, but if a publicly traded group is in this bucket, this needs to be investigated a lot further. Politico gets to sell itself to German propaganda giant Axel Springer for $1 billion. So they're selling the trust they have with the American people, for those Americans who do trust them. They're selling that trust to the highest bidder. That's what they're doing here. They're just saying, hey, if you pay us $1 billion, what narrative do you want us to push with the American people? So again, with Zero Hedge, it's not just the subscriptions. There are huge ad contracts, dinner parties. DC throws itself under the guise of media conferences, sponsorship, etc., all paid by taxpayers. And so here you go. I'm going to tie in the USAID thing here. So USAID funding to Politico, $32 million. So you tell me, what on earth is an entity that sells you their sales pitch is they're helping starving Ethiopian kids? How is giving Politico $32 million helping starving kids in Ethiopia? Answer, it's not. And the bottom line is this USAID has nothing, and it never did, have anything to do with aid to poor people. The only thing it's aiding are the mainstream media outlets. So they're just a mouthpiece for the federal government. Unbelievable. Well, like I said in a tweet today, I have no idea how 2025 is going to play out, but there's never going to be a dull moment. That I am confident of. So on that bombshell, guys, I'd like to encourage you to go to rebelcapitalistlive.com. That is the annual event. And boy, oh boy, this year, you're going to need it. I'm going to need it, for heaven's sakes. Not just hearing all of the incredible insights from the speakers we have there, get to meet them face to face, have a beer with them, shake their hand, ask their question, listen to their presentation. But probably even more importantly, in this tumultuous world we live in, it's networking with your fellow rebel capitalists. It's like the MasterCard commercial. That's completely priceless. So you're not going to want to miss this opportunity, especially this year in 2025. So go to rebelcapitalistlive.com, get your tickets. The earlier you get your tickets, the cheaper they are. Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Wanted to let you know of a brand new channel I started where I'm going to be interviewing all of your favorites. Lynn Alden, Chris McIntosh, Robert Kiyosaki, Doug Casey, Luke Groman, Brent Johnson, Jeff Snyder, Peter Schiff, Mike Maloney, just to name a few. So to make sure you never miss one of these incredible interviews, you're going to want to click the link in the description right now and subscribe to Rebel Capitalist Interviews. And I will see you on the next video.